Hey folks, welcome to Wally DM, and today we have a Dungeon Master Roundtable for you, and I am joined by my YouTube friends, Fred from How to D&D, Juice from Master of the Game, and Josiah from the Dungeon Dad channel. Now, our topic today is rare lycanthropes. So, Fred, why don't you start us off? Give us a rare lycanthrope that you've used in a game or would like to use in a future game.
So there's a werewolf, as we all know, there's a werewolf, but there's also a wolf were. I'm not going to talk about that. Josiah already knows exactly what I'm talking about because he's probably familiar with that monster, which is kind of like the reverse of a werewolf. But I won't talk about that. No, I'll talk about the Jackalwere because I've actually used that monster. I've found Jackalweres really scary for players and their characters just because of, they're they look at like a very easy thing to deal with, but they're not. They tend to have damage immunity to things that you weren't expecting at such a low level. And sometimes I have to say, I feel like they even do a better job than the normal were creatures or lycanthropes. And I could never get the sleep gaze to work because the DC is so crap on it. And like, so DC 10, like, come on. I mean, all the players have got at least like a 13, and how has the monster only got a 10? So I can never get it to work. So the only other thing that I can do is just swamp them. Since they've got pack tactics and 5e, I've used them to just swamp the players. And usually they decide that once their normal weapons aren't doing anything, it's time to leave, and then they run away. I am more fond of using them as a spy because they actually make a pretty good spy. You can disguise them as somebody else, and they can infiltrate, and they can get up to a lot of mischief, and then lead somebody down the garden path, and then eventually have them for lunch on toast. So yeah, that's one of my favorite ones to use. And I actually just recently went back over the lore for these things, and there's some really peculiar things about them. Their developmental cycle. Do you really want to hear about Jackalwere lore? Because I don't know. Those videos are really, really long, and it can be quite depressing for people who aren't into lore. But I can. So the developmental process is quite long and quite interesting, but I'll stop. I'll just stop. It's somebody else's turn.
Well, I am curious, though, what is the difference between a regular lycanthrope and a jackalwere?
Well, a Jackalwere is pretty similar, really, in most respects. They can turn into a jackal. They have a hybrid form, and they can turn into a human. And they're not restricted by the moon. The moon doesn't really it's not really part of the equation. Their ability to transform is very dependent on their lifespan. So I believe for the first 2 years, the Jackalwere pup looks just like a jackal and can't change into anything. It's not until they're at least 2 years of age that they can actually transform into the hybrid form, where they sort of look like a humanoid jackal standing on 2 feet. And then I think it's another year after that they look like a 9-year-old human. So it takes about 3 years for them to actually be able to transform into a human form. So they can't do everything straight away. It takes a little bit of time. And it's not, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a curse. They tend to hang around with jackals, and they can actually mate with other jackals, not just jackalwere, but a coupling between a jackal and a jackalwere will always produce another jackal. It won't produce jackalwere. But if you can get if they have a boner for another jackalwere, then yes, they can have little jackalwere pups. So
I knew we were going to get into the mating lifestyles of the Jackalwere as soon as you started.
It's just like, I shouldn't ask that second question. There we go.
Well, I was looking up, seeing what the mating ritual for the Jackalwere is like, and unfortunately for the audience, I was unable to find significant and definitive information that's graphic. So
I have all right. So I have one more question for you, Fred. Did you clear your browsing history after you looked that up? Because that's very important. You don't want anybody stumble across googling the mating of Jackalweres.
Well, no, because I never clear my browser on my phone, and since it's on my phone, there could be all sorts of things on there.
Start getting ads for it on your Facebook and your Google.
Well, I mean, I stuck it into a Google Doc, so I don't. I think it's there now.
Sounds safe.
All that. I mean, everything's there now.
All right, Jackalwere, and that is in the 5th edition Monster Manual. I'll have to revisit that one. I usually just thumb through it and pass it. So, cool. I'm gonna have to use those pack tactics. What about you, Juice? What do you have for us? What's a rare lycanthrope?
I don't have a rare one. Unfortunately, I am pretty boring when it comes to this stuff. I either take something and I reskin it, and I don't lean heavily on the lore that's within any real setting or anything like that, unless I'm running something in that setting. So two of my 4 D&D campaigns, for example, are in my homebrew world. So I've used werewolves, and I use them quite a bit. I have a city called Traskeel that is surrounded by a swamp, and it's a walled-in city. Now, there's lore in my setting that there's werewolves and a lot of wolves in the surrounding areas. In fact, my Sunday night campaign, we just fought a werewolf last month, and some wolves that were traveling with it. In this setting, in this town, they have a festival every year where they like the guards there are like the weakest guards you can think of. Some of them are extremely old. They do not look like they can help the city. The people in charge in the city, though, they do this festival every year where they take the mature younger men in the city and they take them from their families. But it's a rite of passage. It's coming of age. And they go off to another place outside the wall where they get turned into werewolves. And actually werewolves patrol around the outside and things like that. And the city can't stop them. And this is a big point of what's going on in this area of my setting. I've always used it. Now, I don't necessarily do the silvered weapons hurt it or anything like that. I do say magical weapons and things like, hurt it. It's not dependent on the moon necessarily like normal werewolves are. There's a lot of tropes that are broken with it. They can change at will, or if they go into a rage for whatever reason, they can also turn into, like, if they lose their cool. The city has assumptions that this is what's happening because their kids disappear, and then sometimes they'll find mementos, near wolves and things like that. But yeah, that's just one of the things I've incorporated into my setting, and it's always fun to drop a low-level party into this city and run, hey, you're at the start of the festival. I actually have that coming up in this campaign coming up. So, but I've done it in the past for groups, and they've always seemed to enjoy it. So
I like the idea of using monsters in different ways like that, not being stricken to their lore and stuff like that. So it sounds like a great city that I'd never want to visit, for sure.
No, you don't.
Well, what about you, Josiah? What do you have for us?
I really like lycanthropes. I think that they're fun creatures. I think that they're a good blend of, like, everyone knows stuff about werewolves or whatever lycanthropes are using, like the whole silver thing and how the moon affects them and all that stuff. So there's a lot of touchstones to build on there, but there's also a lot of, like, ways that you can subvert that and do fun stuff with it. So I tend to use a lot of lycanthropes in my games, but I think the most out there one I used was we ran a Curse of Strahd campaign like a couple of years ago, where it was literally just Curse of Strahd, but I reskinned the entire thing as like it was Curse of Strahd in the Bayou. Like Strahd was like a really eccentric, like Southern gentleman who owned like a plantation. And one of the things that I changed was, instead of having werewolves everywhere, his minions were like Werecrocodiles. There were Weregators and Werecrocs around. That I had an encounter with the party fighting a bunch of like deep woods Werecroc moonshiners, which was one of the most bizarre encounters I've ever run. that was a lot of fun. Werecrocs, I don't know if there is an official stat block for them now. I don't think there is. What I ended up doing was I basically just took the Werebear and tweaked it a little bit. I gave them like a lockjaw attack, so when they hit with their bite, it would like also grapple and restrain the person. And other than that, just kind of ran them as they were. But yeah, that I think was my favorite use of actual lycanthropes. Like in that same kind of vein, I also am a fan of lycanthrope-esque monsters that turn into people. Like, I don't know if this really constitutes a lycanthrope, but I introduced a race of giants into our Theros campaign that would turn into people, like into humans, to like mingle with humanity, and they would be giants when they were out in the mountains in their home or whatever. Yeah, I don't know. So I guess Werecrocs and WereGiants would be my answer for this question.
There's a couple times there that you said Werecrocs and Strahd, and all I could envision was Strahd wearing Crocs.
I mean, he seems like the kind of guy who would wear Crocs.
Yeah.
There's a Reaper miniature for like a crocodile humanoid that has made me think of doing Werecrocs before. I've never done it, but that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they make great ambush predators. Like, it's basically everything about a crocodile, but then also sometimes it can be a dude with a sword, which is cool.
Right. It's like a barbarian crocodile.
Yeah.
Fred, did you have something that you wanted to add in on that?
I remember Josiah's story about the WereCrocodiles.
Right on.
He's told us the story so many times, and then he said this, and it suddenly flooded back to me that I've used a Wereshark pirate captain in one of my campaigns.
Nice.
Primarily because I have a miniature, and also because Paizo actually expanded the Were something creature repertoire, I guess, in some respects. We see a few more things coming out of them than other places. So yeah, I have actually used Wereshark.
Yeah, they have what is it, Blood of the Moon or something? It's like a short booklet with a bunch of lycanthropy in it from first edition Pathfinder. I have that over there actually.
I mean, the sheer amount of encounters I've run, Fred, that basically were because I had a miniature for it. So there's so many of them. Like, I had this cool miniature that I painted for it, so I just like found the closest thing to that mini and made an encounter with it. I feel that.
Have you guys ever had players that have turned into something like a werewolf or whatever?
Oh yeah, yeah. Especially that's the whole reason for running lycanthropes, isn't it? Yeah.
I've had it happen once where a player had gotten it, and then unfortunately we never got the group back together to play.
Oh no!
So we never got to see how it went.
We did an Innistrad campaign, which lycanthropy is like a huge part of that, where one of the characters was a werewolf. Like, she was a secret werewolf. That was her thing, was that she started the campaign with lycanthropy, and there was a bunch of like inquisitors basically in town looking for someone who was a known werewolf, and the rest of the party didn't know that she was the one that these inquisitors were looking for. So that was just kind of happening in the background while they were doing stuff, but she would get real nervous every time like people from the church showed up, and everyone thought it was just because she didn't like the church guys, but it was like, no, she's actively trying to repress being a lycanthrope.
I always remember back in the day, it'd be like they'd be fighting a lycanthrope, be like, okay, make a saving throw, and they fail. Like, okay, what happens? Nothing.
Yeah, because you don't have it happen now. You have it.
No, that's a couple weeks down the road.
When we were
randomly, like, why did I turn into that?
When we were writing that Curse of Strahd campaign, that was like the big joke, right? Because all the players obviously knew what lycanthropy was and how it worked. So whenever I would get them to make the saving throw after they were bit by a werecrocodile or a werewolf or whatever, and they would pass or fail, that became the joke, was like, if they would fail, I would just be like, cool, you cough, your character coughs. You're like, like that means I have lycanthropy. And then that just kind of became the joke, to the point where like way later in the campaign they'd make the saving throw and look at me and like, do I cough? No,
I've done that to players, but just in general, like, all right, give me a saving throw. They're like sleeping or whatever, and they get so paranoid, and it's so much fun. And it wasn't just for lycanthropy or whatever, it's for whatever, and it's so funny.
Anytime
you can make it, you got the cold.
Anytime you can make a player paranoid is perfect.
I know. I love doing it.
So I'll throw my head in the ring on this. One of the ones that I've used recently, and I guess I should preface this by a lot of the old monster manuals will tell you, go nuts as far as making lycanthropes. Sure, you've got tigers, you got bears, wolves, rats, but there's so many different types out there. So I introduced Werefoxes in my Waterdeep Dragon Heist campaign. They actually had a nightclub that the party visited, and they were actually looking for a legendary item called the Staff of Lycanthropes. Of course, they knew they were looking for an item. They didn't know it was the Staff of Lycanthropes at the time, but they traced it down to this nightclub that was run by Vixen, the Werefox, and of course she had werewolf bodyguards and stuff like that. But I like to play the Werefoxes as sly and cunning, and of course when they're in their human form, they're beautiful, but they are vain and a little bit egotistical and things of that nature. And a little bit of history on those. In AD&D, they used to be called fox women, and it was mainly just elves that were the fox women. But in basic, it just was a werefox, and you could use it however you wanted. But sending my party through this was fun with the werefoxes, the werewolves. They found the Staff of Lycanthropes, and our druid that actually went in and found it had to attune to it, and to attune to it he had to pick an animal. And of course I had all of the normal choices up there. There's rat, there's wolf, there was bear, boar, and tiger, but there was also chicken, because he really liked chickens. They had just saved a chicken ranch and stuff like a chicken farm and things like that, and so he went through the chicken thing. And so part of the Staff of Lycanthropes is now he can turn into the hybrid form of a werechicken, and that is when he can unleash a fear spell. So we didn't extend too much past that, but I do plan on, if we ever pick up on that game again, don't be watching, Jeff, we will have werechickens in our game.
Is that a fox
there you go.
one?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's 3rd edition? Second
Second,
edition.
Yeah, I think.
Very good.
AD&D.
Okay, so those are some of the rarer lycanthropes that we have used or want to use, or maybe some of the common lycanthropes that are in the book that we've used in different ways. Now, I did ask a poll on the Wally DM community tab, which was favorite lycanthrope that is not in the 5th edition monster manual, and the choices were werebat, werefox, wereraven, wereshark, or other. And unsurprisingly, the Wereshark got a 39% and Wereraven at 32%. So a lot of folks out there really like the Weresharks and Wereravens. Hopefully there is a YouTube channel out there that can maybe feature one of these monsters, maybe even a Werecroc force at some point in the future. That would be really cool. But with that being said, I want to thank everybody for watching, and a big thanks to my YouTube friends for hanging out with us. And also leave a comment below. Let us know your favorite lycanthrope, whether it's a rare one or one from the book. And thank you very much for watching, and on to the next.